Oh, hello. It's been a while since I've done a video, but it's a lovely day today, spring. It's just been very difficult with various things. The whole winter's been really difficult, actually. I won't go too much into that. This week I've had a funeral and another friend's father died, and that's, yeah, so sad. Even though he was very, very old, still just as difficult nonetheless. Anyway, I really wanted to talk this week because on at the weekend I was absolutely furious with Wes Streeting's comments about the overdiagnosis of mental ill health. And during the week, I like to listen to Nicky Campbell's phone in on Radio 5 Live, but sometimes it drives me crazy listening to I'm too nervous to phone in. I sometimes text in, but I couldn't speak on the phone. But, whenever they talk about benefits or cutting back on social security and everything like that, it just really gets my goat, because we had all that in the coalition years, and the austerity, and George Osborne and IDS and David Cameron have lots of names for them which aren't their names, rude names, vicious names, but not vicious, but you know what I mean. They just did so much damage to people with disabilities and long-term chronic conditions. So anyway, this person phoned in who was a doctor, and she was off sick herself. And I just wrote down what she said and I shared it in groups. And I just thought, actually, I've thought about some of it since, and I'll say that at the end. But so I quoted her. She said, the thing about overdiagnosis, this wouldn't be said if it was a physical health problem. If some diagnostic guidelines for diabetes or emphysema or hypertension changed, and all of a sudden we were recognising more people with diabetes due to a different diagnostic criteria, the incidence of diagnoses would suddenly shoot up, because we get more people in for assessment and more people would be diagnosed. That wouldn't mean we were making people who don't have diabetes suddenly have diabetes. That would mean the incidence would be catching up with the true population prevalence. And it's the same with ADHD, autism, mental health problems. We're not overdiagnosing people. The statistics are catching up with the true population prevalence. Back in the day, if you were left-handed, you weren't allowed to write with your left hand. You were forced to use the pen with your right hand. So the incidence and prevalence of left-handedness was low. We then realised at some point along the way that you can't force people to be someone they're not. And for a lot of people, cause them trauma and distress by forcing them to write with their right hand. So we started to support children to be left-handed in school instead, give them different scissors, give them different pens, change the way they're able to be taught reading and writing, and all of a sudden the incidence of left-handedness went up. That's not people saying, I want to be left-handed too. It's just they're allowed to be their true selves. And it was an excellent comment, and it just so annoys me when people say, oh, everybody is autistic or ADHD. It's exactly as she said. People used to say that about diabetes. There's been so many things that come to light, and we understand more about them, and people therefore have come forward and they're diagnosed. And the reason we're seeing a lot more women now diagnosed, and adult men as well, is that it's been overlooked. It was, our understanding has changed, our awareness has changed, and so there's a bottleneck now of people waiting to be diagnosed, and it can make a whole difference to their lives. And there's a whole other area about whether it's an illness anyway. So she did mention autism and ADHD there, but it's one of those, if you look at the social model of disability, it's about society is the thing that makes it difficult for people who are neurodiverse, and there's a growing number of sizable minority of people who are, the way society is run, the way work is run, the way education, all structures are run, they're all geared around neurotypical, but there's a lot of those people who will be undiagnosed neurodiverse people. So I don't even like this big dichotomy, because until you're diagnosed, you might think, oh, I don't fit in, but you might not necessarily think you're you might think, oh, well, I must be neurotypical, or I don't know, you might not even think about it. But anyway, I just having listened to that doctor speak, though, I do think that there is, I've thought about it since, and I do think that people have been funny about some physical illness, because I also have fibromyalgia and I also have ME, and people have because so they're funny about mental illness because a lot more people are, the parity of physical and mental health things, but they're also funny with things like that are invisible and that they can't take a blood test for or something. So conditions like fibromyalgia and ME and many other conditions are treated in that sort of dismissive way, and have been, really badly spoken about in certain people in the media, particularly right wing, who, so it just really does get me very angry. And also this thing about overdiagnosis of mental, because it's not, autism isn't considered a mental health issue. Obviously the effects of autism can be very disabling, but it's classified as a neurological condition and not necessarily mental health. And then again, I have an issue, so I'm going on here, with this whole division between physical and mental health. Anybody who's had mental health problems, who've had anxiety and depression, and they're two that get a lot of stick with anybody who's trying to cut back on benefits, or people claiming for their conditions. Anybody who's had depression and anxiety, and I have suffered a lot with anxiety in my life, knows just how physical the symptoms are. The palpitations, the effects on your bowel, your bladder, your sleep, your migraines, your racing, the activity in your brain, your heart rate, all that sort of thing, sweating, it's all very physical. So it's just a silly, arbitrary division between all conditions, putting them into these neat little boxes. Anyway, I've gone on for long, but I just felt I needed to say something about this, because I have been fighting against cuts to benefits and what the social, I don't like welfare, social security is what it is. And I do, and the way they go on and on about people going back into need to get more people into work. Well, actually, PIP is nothing to do with going into work. It's not an out of work benefit. It is actually it's to meet the extra costs of disability. And in fact, a lot of people use their PIP to go into work, so that argument just doesn't stack up at all. So anyway, I could go on for ages about this and probably do some more, and it's nothing to do with my writing today, but I just needed to say this because so much has been going on about it. Anyway, I will shut up now. But I'm sure there's lots of you out there who agree with me. Well, I know I've got there's solidarity, and there's lots of people online who have been fighting against this sort of it's the rhetoric more than anything. It's the rhetoric against people who have restrictive conditions. And it's just, if you haven't got enough money, like the government say they haven't, then just say so. Just say, well, we would like to, and we recognise it. Don't just then use an argument to try and think, oh, there's too many people, and so we therefore must cut the money. Sorry, that just doesn't, I don't buy it. And yeah, I do agree that it is nice for it is important, should I say, for young people to have opportunities, but it's like the whole emphasis on work in the very narrow sense, because most people want to do something. Most people do something, whether it's education, whether it's voluntary work, whether it's caring, whether it's creativity. You know, it's not about going out to work and earning a living necessarily. It's you can be, anyway, I said I wouldn't go on, but I believe in the citizens, basic income for everybody, and then over and above that people can earn, and so a basic income would meet everybody's needs, and then over and above that, if you've got disabilities or if you're going out and doing work, you would always be better off. But you don't go to the lowest common denominator and think, well, we'll make some people live on nothing, or cut their extra costs just because you should address the people in work, and the whole cutting back of the unions, and once I start on this, it's a real bugbear. I'm going to stop now. So anyway, it's a lovely spring day today. Bye.